From Los Angeles, Rethinking Heroes with Cary Harrison.
I've spent a decade taking a bite out of conspiracy theories, unraveling urban legends, and grappling with worldwide top secret issues.
I've even racked up some of their awards.
Wow, I mean, first of all, what a question.
Journalism is about telling the truth.
All while ferreting out the bottom line.
I'm a Harrison Hellraiser.
With me, Cary Harrison, as your guide.
Rethinking Heroes with Cary Harrison.
And it is Rethinking Heroes, rethinkingheroes.com. Cary Harrison with you, your new best friend. Don't forget you can sign up for our free newsletter at rethinkingheroes.com. And there you get a copy of all the former shows. You get transcripts of not only the shows and the guests and what we're doing, way easier than just trying to remember it or re-listen, much shorter for sure. But also you're going to be able to get callers' transcripts. Those are really, truly some of my most fabulous favorites. Now, right now, we are live streaming on Instagram. So let me invite you to do that because you're going to want to see this next piece of video. It's perfect for radio, so you don't need to do that. But a lot of you are younger and definitely want to see it on your smartphone, anything with a chip and a signal so you can walk around. You can go to my Instagram, which is at Cary Harrison, Cary. Harrison, at Cary Harrison. That's Instagram. You can also go to my YouTube channel at Cary Harrison. Same thing. You can also go to rethinkingheroes.com and there'll be some links there as well. I'm going to play you a brilliant video, which I guarantee is going to go viral because it captures so brilliantly the dreaded Project 2025, a guaranteed rupture of everything you have ever known in this country. If democracy is wrenched from the white knuckles of the rest of us, Project 2025, well, it's so beautifully explained in this Schoolhouse Rock style video, written and animated and performed by Jason Kravitz. And because we're live streaming video on Instagram and YouTube, again, at Cary Harrison, you will be able to see in one beautiful nutshell everything you've tried to explain to people who don't get it, because here it is.
Hey there, who are you?
Oh, just the most important document in our country's history.
You mean the Constitution?
Nope.
The Declaration of Independence?
Yes, again.
The Federalist Papers?
The Federalist, what? No, even more important than whatever you just said. Now sit right here and I'll tell you all about me. I'm just a little paper for the ages, a way to set the government straight. A short 887 pages on how to make America great again by forcing through the president's agenda, removing all of those who disagree, replacing with our loyal party members, and reclaim our great country. In sum, give power to the president to authorize the government to legislate morality and wrestle back normality from Marxist ideologies that infiltrate our policies like gender, race, or anything woke. We're gonna abolish the Department of Education, turn the swearing in into a coronation. America's great salvation will arrive with Project 2025.
Coronation? You mean like a king?
No, it's called the unitary executive theory. It gives the next president unchecked power to do whatever they want.
So, a king?
Oh, let's not get hung up on semantics. Here's how it's gonna work. Once that we've started the transition, and no one's left to tell us to wait, we'll go through every policy position, get rid of all the language that we hate, like civil rights, diversity, and unions, and pronouns to mention but a few, defunding any liberal institutions that dare question what we do.
I'm pretty sure the Supreme Court...
Oh, the Supreme Court. That's a good one. Now, where was I? Abortion will be pretty much illegal, and reproductive rights will be gone. We'll get back to the biblical ideal that a family means a daddy and a mom with kids. Repeal the crazy climate regulations that get in the economy's way. with everyone reporting to their stations on Inauguration Day, when we give power to the president to authorize the government to legislate morality, expelling abnormality like godless ideologies, protecting inequalities like gender, race, and anything woke. We're gonna abolish the Department of Education, convert the melting pot into a Christian nation. The stage is set and we'll be going live in 2025.
You can't seriously say all that.
Wanna bet? Come on, let's crack me open.
Page 124.
Make more nuclear weapons.
Page 257.
End the war on fossil fuels.
Page 214.
No more gun violence protection.
Page 298.
Or feeding hungry kids at our schools.
Turn to page
Ban
5.
offensive books from the classroom.
563.
Make it hard to register to vote.
Page 449.
Dismantle Medicare.
534.
Kill off the grizzly
Page
bear.
4.
Delete the term sexual orientation, gender equality, awareness of sensitivity, diversity, equity, inclusion, abortion, reproductive health, and reproductive rights out of every rule, regulation, contract, grant, and piece of federal legislation that exists. And that's an actual quote. And that, my friend, is only the beginning of how this makes America great. You'll be so overwhelmed with all the winning that you won't know what you've lost till it's too.
Wait! This doesn't sound great at all.
No?
No, it sounds like a fucking nightmare.
Well, I guess if you wanted to, there's still some things you can do to stop it.
Like what?
Well, if you vote to save democracy and stand against autocracy and tell your friends and family, enough with this insanity. We fought too long to part with these essential civil liberties like privacy and equity and bodily autonomy, and what defines a family, equality and empathy. And we're not going back, and maybe we can stop this radical abomination. The future all depends on your participation. That's the way democracy will thrive. America was made for you and me, so let's defend our freedom and our dignity. Now raise your voice and let's keep hope alive in 2025. Now vote!
Beautiful. Project 2025 explained in Schoolhouse Rock style, written, animated, and performed by Jason Kravitz. Now, you can see it again by signing in for our free newsletter at rethinkingheroes.com. We're going to have archives of this and everything else. You know, what's important to notice is that throughout history, authoritarian leaders, and this is what Project 2025 is, almost 900 pages of the Heritage Foundation and every awful thing going back from Dick Nixon to now, every trick of the trade, every way to have a unitary executive, all rolled into one manual. And on day one, it gets executed. Speaking of executed, the Department of Education gets executed. Your Medicare gets executed. Government agencies get executed. It all reports to the White House. The White House decides what gravity is, decides what the temperature is. It is over. And that White House would be only occupied by Donald Trump because this is the result of his reelection. So think about that. If you have to explain to whatever a swing voter is that there could even be somebody so confused, that's what they need to know is going to happen. It has nothing to do with making America great again and blah, blah, blah. It has everything to do with absolute whole cloth ripping and shredding of everything they know, including their jobs, and thinking they're going to get paid for it, thinking they're going to get overtime, thinking they're going to have any kind of medicine if they get sick. You know, one tactic they're using is manipulating religious texts like the Bible to further their aims. By distorting scriptures, these leaders are justifying their actions and cultivating a sense of divine legitimacy. Let's take Governor Ron DeSantis, Florida's governor, whose abortion bans are now blocking women from getting cancer treatment. Yeah, only because they're pregnant. Vanity Fair just did an expose on the trail of death in what used to be called the Sunshine State, and they can't get cancer treatments because doctors don't dare treat pregnant women because doctors can end up in prison. Just like if you say gay on state property, it is a third-degree felony. If you mention slavery actually happened on state property in Florida, third-degree felony. So better to let people friggin' die. And unfortunately, that is vulture capitalism and the disgusting way we do medicine. That Hippocratic oath should be shoved up those doctors' asses. And they should all act like Doctors Without Borders, pretend they're in Haiti. This is outrageous and disgusting that the people are going along with this. But that's what authoritarianism looks like. And if you question his authority, you are questioning God's will. Authoritarian regimes exploit religious sentiments to justify oppressive actions. They cherry pick Bible verses to align with their political agenda, discouraging dissent and rallying followers by framing opposition as a spiritual betrayal. The consequences are significant. Using religion as a tool of oppression, well, it warps social values. It leads to societies where questioning leadership is heretical. I like that, heretical. Talk heretic, right? We're going back to the Middle Ages. We don't burn at the stake anymore, but why not? Why not bring that back? If we can ban books, we can burn people at the stake too. I promise you, there will be crowds. We know this because when they recently got rid of the electric chair in Florida, there would be huge amounts of camp out, overnight camping parties, hundreds of people just to be outside the Stark Penitentiary, inside of which was the electric chair. And then in Alabama, their electric chair was called Yellow Mama. Same thing. And there'd actually be a brownout when they run all that juice. So it was exciting. The air prickled and tingled with thrill. So burning people at the stake, why not? That's next in line. And that's if Project 2025 happens federally. You can bet each of these states are going to take full advantage of it. So what does this do? Well, this fosters blind obedience and fear. It tarnishes the true essence of religious teachings. Exploiting the Bible by authoritarian leaders is a powerful means of control. It turns deep-rooted faith into a weapon. Recognizing these tactics is crucial for any of us who value freedom, value justice, and only by exposing these manipulations can we dismantle oppression. In a second, we're going to find out, do we have our yes. Let's bring in Reverend Stephanie Clark. She's going to address taboos around God, around sex and death. She founded Soul Home in Johannesburg, South Africa's first New Thought multiracial ministry, and it was aimed at healing apartheid's wounds, something we could use today, huh? Reverend Steph studied under Reverend Michael Beckwith of Agape here in Los Angeles, and she's authored books and is known as the Irreverent Reverend. And Reverend Stephanie Clark, I want to welcome you to Rethinking Heroes.
Thank you so much, Cary. Thank you. Lovely to be here.
Well, it's lovely to have you here. I wish these were lovelier times and we could simply bask in the spiritual wonderment that is out there, but we have to kind of try to explain to people what's going on. And I thought, who better but a person who lives in that world of spirituality and has seen weaponized many times general theological teachings, pervert them, rewrite them, put them in a thing, stuck in a little bit of gunpowder, throw in some cotton, and bam, it comes out the other end. Let's use religion as a weapon, Reverend Stephanie Clark, as does Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida, whose crushing penalties on women are now causing swaths of death through his rebranding of the Sunshine State into the free state of Florida. Free for whom? Not so sure. But that's why critical thinking has to come into play here. Before we touch on women, and we will, perhaps we could touch on a heterosexual, self-declared heterosexual, Ron DeSantis, who spends all day, all night fantasizing about drag queens, other men's turgid and swollen genitalia in their pants, and hot man-on-man action. Now, the inverse would be fully ridiculous. A gay man fantasizing about a woman's breasts. Pretty much never happens, I could tell you. But it's extremely unlikely, therefore, when you're pointing one finger forward, as the governor does, he's always pointing three fingers back at himself. And I'm imagining 99% of straight men in the audience actually never think about hot man-on-man action, not even once a day, maybe not even once a year. So what does this say about a governor who has even made it illegal to say the word gay on state property?
Are you asking me?
I am asking you. That's how we ask questions here on this side of North America.
That was one hell of an introduction. Thank you. Well, before I got on the show tonight, I was thinking about Paul, who had Paul in the Bible, St. Paul, who had many restrictions around women. Women shouldn't talk, women should submit to their husbands, women should wear a head covering in church. And I read something from Bishop Spong, who was a very liberal bishop, and he suggested that Paul might have been gay, hence the focus on that sexuality was somehow evil and wrong. The whole idea of original sin stems way back to the 5th century, and St. Augustine, who was a theologian, and I suspect he was a sex addict, because he the Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous 12-step program is also named the Augustine Fellowship. And St. Augustine was a very sexual man, and lived with his mistress for 14 years, had a child with his mistress, and then had a spiritual experience and decided that when he wanted his penis to be hard, it was soft. And when he wanted his penis to be soft, it was hard. And he could control his arm, he could control his arms, his legs, his other bodily parts, but he couldn't control his genitals. So he figured out very logically that his genitals must be of the devil. And then he invented this notion of original sin. And the original sin is the human temptation, or the human propensity towards being tempted. And one of our greatest temptations is sexual pleasure. So I believe that we're meant to be enjoying sex, and that sex and sexual pleasure is definitely not a sin. But St. Augustine set it up that our weakness is the sin, our weakness into being tempted into sex. And it was very convenient to blame women and blame female sensuality for this propensity to sin. So like women, because women were so evil, men were drawn into sin, and they had no control over their genitalia whatsoever in the presence of a beautiful woman, especially a beautiful woman tempting them with some kind of delicious fruit.
It's funny, we see that in Calabria in southern Italy. If you go to any of the towns there are old castles, and the Italians still don't really view them as museums. You can go in and touch chastity belts that are 800 years old, that are made out of rusted metal coils, all of this to, quote, protect the women. And I don't think, you're a woman, do you crave wearing a chastity belt?
No, thank you. They're major causes of disease, pain, even death from all of the infections and irritations that would be set up in the vagina area.
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, we go to the Middle East where women are covered in burqas. It's not that the women love, it's 118 degrees Fahrenheit. I can't wait to throw on a black tarpaulin with eye slits. Like, that is my idea of a great time. It's the men who cannot control themselves. They cannot. So they have to throw a tarpaulin over the top of the women and make them just a black hump. Why do you think nuns look like that? Not by mistake. Same thing. Not sexual, because the men cannot control themselves.
Exactly. And the men cannot control other men either. So God forbid, I lived in the Middle East for a while, God forbid that a man's wife would be attracted to another man. And God forbid this other man might give the wife more sexual pleasure than her husband. That would be the ultimate humiliation. So rather, let's not have the women even, be seen by other men. So let's limit their freedom of movement so that they can't even get into that situation where they're going to be in a sexual relationship, or even, God forbid, a flirtation with another man. That's also worthy of stoning. Just being being seen to be looking at another man. That's enough to get a woman stoned.
So here's a question, Reverend Stephanie Clark. In the Ten Commandments, it says that a man shall not covet another man's wife, but it does not say a man shall not covet another man's husband, because clearly God didn't give a bleep. If he did, it'd be in there. Let's face it. If Jesus cared, he would have mentioned it a million times. Not once, zero, 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 nothing gay, nothing, not even once. Nope, didn't happen, never existed. Not a problem, not a problem. But the other stuff is a problem. So we, of course, are not educated about this, except here on this show. The show turns into an audiobook, which renders through the Southeast, which then becomes a banned book. That's the only time I like banned books, is that you can't get access to this except online. Getting back to Ron DeSantis, whose absolute obsession with male genitalia, whether it's turgid, whether it's flaccid, hot man-on-man action, drag queens, which you don't see that many, all the rest of it. What is that? How many straight men actually live in that fantasy world that you're aware of? You have parishioners.
Well, interestingly, but I agree with you that straight men really fantasize about sex with other men.
Well, I'm not saying, I don't believe that straight men fantasize about other men. I think straight men fantasize about women. That's kind of my point. They don't. So if you say you're straight, but all you do is think about men buggering men, et cetera, fellation, the whole soup, cat, and pizzas, how straight are you? Like, it's so disgusting because of the way you're built by the universe that this is not your thing. It'd be like, I don't care for Brussels sprouts. So when I walk by frozen Brussels sprouts in the freezer section of the grocery store, I don't whip open the door, pull out the Brussels sprouts and take a ball peen hammer, smash them and start screaming and yelling and then make them illegal. You know why? Because I don't like Brussels sprouts. They're not on my radar, but they are on this governor's radar. His radar is pinging at 3 a.m, 2 p.m. You can't even say the word on state property. He is just a fizz with animation when it comes to hot man-on-man action. I'll tell you, the gay community wishes we had that kind of action.
So it's very sad. He was born into the Roman Catholic religion, and I find that Catholics have the most problems dealing with their sexuality. That's where sexuality is, ultimately the sin. And so if anything's sinful, then it's attractive, right? It's the forbidden fruit notion. So poor Governor DeSantis hasn't probably had any forum at any point in his life to just talk freely about his sexual feelings, his sexual urges. And so now it's kind of leaking out in this very perverted way.
Yes, it's true. And when you think about the Catholic Church offering a job, I have a job. And if you go to Europe and see how priests, they have Mercedes, they have swimming pools, they have a gym in the house, they live well. Here's a job description. We're going to give you a Mercedes. We're going to give you a house. We're going to give you a lot of power. You work 2 hours a week. That's it. Pop in on a Sunday, go blah, 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 blah. Rest of the time, it's great. Live like a king. But the only thing you can't do, no women, no matter what, no women, no kissing, no thinking, no fantasizing, no masturbation, nothing. No women. Anyone in the room. And you'll see like 4 hands go up out of 1,000. And they're the 4 gay guys. Because wait, you're going to pay me, give me a place to live. I work 2 hours a week. I can go to the gym. I can really work on myself and be awesome. And I don't have to date girls. I'm in. I mean,
what a win.
Who do you think is signing up for that?
Right. And that also stems back to times when celibacy was considered to be something that would bring people closer to God. So again, St. Augustine suggested that people got married if they had to, just to procreate. But once the children had come into the world, then actually they should live together as platonic, in a platonic relationship, like brother and sister. And then the church introduced the idea of celibacy. And that was mainly because it was difficult to divide up the lands and keep dividing up the lands amongst the progeny of the monks. So it's better to say the monks had to be celibate. It wasn't really anything to do with a clearer channel to God. It was more about let's not divide the wealth so that the wealth is no longer really wealth for anybody. And now, yes, the priesthood is a fabulous cover for gay men, absolutely. And
one of our one of our
too.
favorite popes, Benedict the 16th, or Notzinger, as I used to call him, Ratzinger, the one that predates the current pope, the happy pope, the climate change is real pope, that one, the one that's currently sitting. The one before was a rabid right-wing homophobe, nasty bastard, and he retired early. Popes don't retire. Oh, I'm tired. I'm going to retire. The most powerful position on earth. He is now retired with his boyfriend, living in Munich. Yeah. Okay. Like, why isn't that on the front cover of the New York Times? It's kind of interesting. So this is kind of what's going on. The overarching argument here, and the part that's interesting to everybody, is when we get back to Project 2021, 2025, when we get back to all of these laws, they're always connected to the appetites of the guy who starts them, whether it's Joseph Smith starting Mormonism, who got kicked out of whorehouses one after another in New York State. He was a drunkard, and he had to keep getting kicked out, ends up in Utah. No booze now, because we know what happens when he drinks, but you can have as many wives as you need, just like a whorehouse. It's the same thing. So unfortunately, people get intoxicated by these politicians, especially if they're billionaires and rich and powerful, and they make these decrees, but people don't have the critical thinking to say, look at all the menu of appetites this guy has just listed, who he is, telling me I can't do it. I wasn't looking to do it anyway. So it's forbidden. So it doesn't bother me. Burning books. I don't read books. I had a Kindle. We got rid of it on a cruise. You know, I don't have children, so I don't care what they do at school, blah, blah, blah. It really works for his base, which are over 60 and white. So the book burning offends the rest of us, but not his people. All of this very well thought out. This is why you're so wonderful. And I appreciate talking to you, Reverend Stephanie Clark, author of 4 different books known as The Irreverent Reverend, which we've been delighted in hearing. Who better? If I just brought on the mainstream, we wouldn't have gotten any kind of enlightenment. You're addressing taboos around God, sex, social politics. You founded Soul Home in Johannesburg, South Africa. We do hear a bit of a dialect. You hear a little bit of a dialect in me, so we'll just blame it on me. You hear a dialect, I don't hear one. In South Africa's first New Thought multiracial ministry, which you built aimed at healing apartheid's wounds. Apartheid, something we're now seeing in real time, especially in the state of Florida, where it is illegal to mention that slavery ever happened in the state of Florida. The only official explanation for it is that Black people were looking for opportunity, and the white man brought him over and gave him all this wonderful opportunity that he is still enjoying today. It's enough to make you absolutely vomit, you having been absolutely on the inside of apartheid. Reverend Steph studied under Reverend Michael Beckwith here locally in Los Angeles, and you can learn more at RevStephanieClark.com. Clark with an E on the end. RevStephanieClark with an E on the end.com. You can get this video simply by getting our free newsletter at rethinkingheroes.com, rethinkingheroes.com, or if you're watching us live right now on Instagram at Cary Harrison, CaryHarrison, or on YouTube, you'll be able to see it as well. Let's finish, Rev. Stephanie Clark. What is the solution from your spiritual standpoint to the chaos and mayhem that is today?
Oh, gosh, what a big question. Well, from the spiritual standpoint, my understanding is that we ultimately are all one, and that the recognition of that allows us to work towards a world that works for everybody. Currently, the division and the division that's really a feast for the media is taking us further and further away from anything that might look like a solution. For me, the solution would be win-win, and something that we would have to work together in order to establish, incorporating everybody's views, incorporating diversity and black, white, transgender, gay, the whole range of human expression needs to be included in the conversation, which I see the Democrats doing a whole lot more of than I see the Republicans doing currently.
Turns out you're right. And it's not an opinion. They just happen to be doing more. Who knew? So we're going to look into that coming up after the break. I want to thank you so much, the irreverent Reverend. Say that 10 times fast. Steph Clark, appreciate you very much coming on Rethinking Heroes today.
Thank you so much, Cary. I loved being with you. Thank you.
Me too. We'll do it again. Coming up, let's take your calls. Let's take your calls on how mingling religion with modern politics, with the founding fathers, would they have approved? Do you think that Donald Trump is a worthy emissary of God? Do you think that Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida, who reminds you that you shall not covet another man's wife, may have found a loophole in the 10 Commandments because it says nothing about coveting another man's husband, something he's coveting apparently 24 hours a day? I'm sure he's thinking about that every second of the day, every waking second. Let's also explore the alleged potential shooter at Donald Trump's golf course. Under Ron DeSantis, it is absolutely legal to both conceal and carry weapons. Had it been Kamala Harris's golf course, the guy would have only been charged with trespassing, since concealed carry and standing your ground is part of the law, protected by the law. Do you think the Second Amendment supporting Donald Trump should give this guy a free pass for following the law, albeit deserving a misdemeanor for trespassing? Are laws equally applied to obese billionaire white men who own golf courses and the rest of us? Wow, so many questions. Your calls are next at 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-5735. That's 818-985-5735.
Listen while it's still legal.
Rethinking Heroes with Cary Harrison. RethinkingHeroes.com.
We are in complete control. We are
Rethinking Heroes with Cary Harrison. RethinkingHeroes.com.
Rethinking Heroes, RethinkingHeroes.com. Cary Harrison here with you, your new best friend. Don't forget, you can get a free newsletter simply by going to RethinkingHeroes.com. You're going to get archives, all the different shows, plus transcripts of this and every other show. You can also watch us live streaming right now because we do have a video. And you can go to Instagram at Cary Harrison, CaryHarrison. Same thing for YouTube. You can just Google it, even if it's easier, at Cary Harrison, both YouTube and Instagram. I'm kind of liking Instagram. It's cool. And there are lots of people on it from all over the world. Last week, you'll remember we were getting calls from Great Britain, from here and beyond. So this show has a giant reach here. We're going to take your calls right now. We're going to take calls on mingling religion with modern politics. We're also going to explore the alleged potential shooter at Donald Trump's golf course, who was legally carrying a weapon. Yeah, pointing it, but is that illegal when you have concealed carry? Or is it just a misdemeanor for being on a golf course? If it had been someone else, probably a misdemeanor. But the man who supports the Second Amendment, the former president, does not support the Second Amendment when it's inconvenient. Again, we're getting back to what's good for one animal farm. What's good for one pig is definitely not good. Well, I think you're not hearing me because my mic was turned off, and I apologize so much for that. Let's just take that over again and say, take your calls on mingling religion with modern politics, also exploring the alleged potential shooter at Donald Trump's golf course under Ron DeSantis. Absolutely legal to both conceal and carry weapons. Had it been Kamala Harris's golf course, the guy would have only been charged with trespassing, since conceal and carry and standing your ground is part of the law. Pointing a gun, not illegal, not in Florida. So do you think that the Second Amendment supporting Donald Trump should give this guy a free pass for following the law, albeit deserving a misdemeanor for trespassing? So that's what I said earlier. Laws equally being applied to billionaires and then the rest of us. While you're dialing in at 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-5735, taking a look at also hypocrisy of religion and those who practice it that way at 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-5735. Let's remember that former President Dick Cheney has endorsed Kamala Harris. Now, the blowback from his own party has escalated. Many preachers, like Fred Phelps from the Westboro Baptist Church, have made it clear that Dick Cheney is working with Beelzebub and that the world as we know it is now over. See how dramatic I was? Because that's what they're saying. Well, this is a true masterpiece of modern American oratory. There's going to be thousands of people that take it as marching orders, just like the thousands of people that took Donald Trump's marching orders and performed a coup d'etat on the Capitol building. This is what the bottom of the pyramid, the gutter snipes, the bottom feeders in America, this is what they sound like when they're preaching.
Cheney doing the bidding of his dyke daughter, Mary, to point the flag. This is our job. This is our watch. This is our duty and nobody else's. You're not going to stop us from performing it. Bang! Bang! People are not going to be only eating their little children, little babies. They're going to be eating each other. Marry a whore named Gomer. Because this nation is a nation of whores. They've gone astray and they've spread their legs to every stranger on every hill and on every green tree. And you fiddle and hawk up a big gob of spit, will you? Spit in God's face. Even as the fires of immolation and cremation and judgment are still burning what little bits of those bodies they can find that the flames can lick at. And anybody preaching any other message is a lying, hell-bound, hypocrite, and heretic. Tear them up! Where the people are sitting around mourning and grieving because the plague of God is upon them. And they're dropping like flies and dying everywhere because of the fornication and the whoremongering of Baal Peor. And in comes the jackass, wagging a whore with him, and has sex with her right on the floor in front of them all. Knowing therefore the terror of the Lord. Terror!
Harrison on the edge.
Well, if that just doesn't set the stage for where we're at today in 2024 in the land of e pluribus unum, that where my ancestors signed the Declaration of Independence and framed the Constitution, it is an entirely different planet, like a science fiction film. Let's go to the phones. Let's say hi first to Mike, You're on Rethinking Heroes.
Hi. Just wanted to express the views of originalists, since our right-wing brethren so often want to hew to some very narrow bit of original wordage and ignoring all the meanings that might go with it. And in the days that the Constitution was framed, everyone was a former British citizen and well acquainted with the history of the past couple of centuries leading up to that point. And one thing that made it notable is that you would have the Reformation and the Counter-Reformation, and people on one side or the other being burned at the stake when there was a change of administration and a change from, papist to anti-papist or vice versa. If anybody wants to find an example of why they put the prohibition against religious texts into the Constitution, just suggest you look up a folk song called "The Vicar of Bray," which tells about the change of one rector's religious views with every change of political administration.
I appreciate that. Love the history. And thank you for that piece of insight there. The vicar of, what was it again? The vicar of?
Bray, as in an ass braying.
Ah, okay. Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Appreciate that little hand grenade of insight. Very much so. That opens up a phone at 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-5735. Let's go next to William in Long Beach. You're on Rethinking Heroes.
Hello, how are you?
Doing great, my friend.
I just wanted to make a comment. When we talk about religion, we have a freedom of religion here in this country. I spent 24 years in the military in order to fight for that. To the point where Kamala Harris and Donald Trump and President Obama, I am a descendant of a slave. And when we get these people that come into office that are not the descendant of a slave, yet they represent us, I have a problem with that. Let me move on to my next point. Number two, in that religion, when we're talking about abortions and women's rights to choose and all these other things, we all have our own beliefs, but we should not allow abortion to be a form of birth control. We should be able to use all those things to prevent abortion to happen. That way we don't have to kill a child. So we have to, then when we're talking about people having this or that sexual orientation, if you are going to be a Christian, here, read the book and find out what it says about these type of lifestyles. If you sleep with a beast, kill the beast and the person. If that person sleeps with them, just cast them out, from amongst you, and they can have their own community, and that's fine. So these are the things that I just wanted to comment on, and let's not take and obscure this book because it is just a guideline and a way to live by. If you believe there's a heaven or hell, then make your choice. That's all.
All right. Thank you so much, my friend. And I love the historical reference, and I love pulling the camera back on the master scene. The master scene back in those days when God in Leviticus, we're going back to the Old Testament, not the new one, said that a man shall not sleep by another man. What was going on around? Oh, don't look. Don't read any pages around it. Don't ask questions. Look, bring back the camera. You realize these were peripatetic people going through horrible deserts, lack of moisture, no food, no water, nothing. And so what happens when, and any man who's honest knows when he's really dehydrated, he is not able to produce much issue, which is a very nice way of saying, you know what I'm talking about. And when you can't make issue, every drop matters. And you've got the mortality rate through the ceiling. Babies are dying. Mothers can't produce milk to suckle their babies because there's not any water. So every sperm is sacred, which of course is the Catholic Church mantra. And so God is saying, don't waste your seed by having a good time. Don't do it with Tim. Don't do it on the belly button of fill in the blank of that person. Don't do it in your hand behind a bush. every single time and 100% of the time, it has to be in service of creating a new life, because your mortality rate and your race is about to vanish off the face of the earth. That's what it meant. Not that God thought it was icky. This is key. And if we were taught this, we could understand and support the idea. But we're not taught that. We're taught that what God meant was this. Yet Jesus didn't say it one time, not one time, not one time, not one time did he mention that. And Jesus mentioned everything important except that, except specifically that. Therefore, it was a nothing. I appreciate your call, my friend. Let's go next to Carlos in Carson. You're on Rethinking Heroes.
Hey, well, listen, a couple of things here. I was fascinated by your topic last week of MK Ultra. And, MK Ultra has been around for a long time, and it's really touched upon various luminaries like Charles Manson, Sirhan Sirhan, the son of Sam, Timothy McVeigh, the Columbine murders. All those people were under mind control. They all were in touch with a psychiatrist named Jolly West, who was part of the MK Ultra mind control experimentations of the 1950s. He was the head of psychiatry at the UCLA and other universities. So, I mean, it's been a persistent problem, and I believe that a lot of our massive homicides these days are part of MK Ultra. A lot of these people, they go out there and kill massive amounts of people, have been trailed by the FBI and the CIA, yet they never prevent the crime. It's very convenient. It creates fear in societies. It creates mayhem, and it divides us. It makes us susceptible to a world regimented society, which is being pushed by the Illuminati. So
okay, well, it could be. It could be. I'm just going to jump in because it could be. It could also be the fact that everybody has guns. Nobody has retirement. Nobody has a future. We have a candidate saying there is no future. America is dead. It's rotting from its core. You must arm yourself. You must get more guns. You must use them. The migrants, by the tens of millions, we know who they are. They're coming over the borders. They're taking your good jobs. They're raping your children. They're eating your pets, eating your dogs and cats. So much so that Springfield, Ohio is shut down. The schools are shut down. They are in the worst kind of chaos because somebody has declared all of this. None of it is happening, but all of it to be true. And there is no national way for people to fact check, nor do they happen to have the skill sets. But they can run down and buy guns. And by God, they have bought their guns, and they are using it to fix the problem as presented before them. I wish we could blame the CIA. That was an internal thing with an entirely different plot of the play. I wouldn't doubt that there are some ramifications of that today, but this is good old NRA fun, just like the recent alleged assassination attempt, second one, on Donald Trump at his own private golf course. A guy with a concealed carry. Again, not only should you have a gun, but you should hide it and carry it anywhere you want, anytime, no restriction. Enjoy it. Have a nice day. That has never existed either. I remember in California, there was some talk, this is 15, 20 years ago, about concealed carry and the rest of it. And people were smart enough and said no. In fact, during Ronald Reagan, when he was governor of California, he decided to take away guns. Ronald Reagan took away guns? Yes. Do you know why? Because the Black Panthers had guns. So he got rid of handguns. That's how he handled the Black Panther problem. So the whole state didn't have guns, at least for a while. So I think desperation, access to weaponry, ability to get even with all the tens of millions of people called migrants, whatever that is, that's the perfect formula. And I would remind you, if you were not an Englishman and didn't come over on the Mayflower, have a land grant from the King of England, you're a migrant. So what if Donald Trump opened that up and said anyone who's Irish or Italian or had a last name that ended with a vowel or anything. You're now a migrant, the biggest deportation ever in history. It's coming, baby. Would you suddenly get concerned, or are you just going to go make dinner? I'm talking to the swing voter because you're the ones apparently that really matter. Fascinating stuff. Let's open up the lines. 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-5735 as we continue. 985-5735, 818-985-KPFK. Cary Harrison with you. We're going to pause for a quick break. We're going to come back. We're going to take more of your calls and unravel all of this madness that is appearing in front of us today.
Listen while it's still legal.
Rethinking Heroes with Cary Harrison. RethinkingHeroes.com. Rethinking Heroes with Cary Harrison. RethinkingHeroes.com.
And it is Rethinking Heroes, RethinkingHeroes.com, where we are live streaming on Instagram right now at Cary Harrison, CaryHarrison, as well as YouTube. Same thing, at Cary Harrison. You can just Google it if it comes up quicker. You'll be able to see archives of this and everything else. Also, if you get our free newsletter at RethinkingHeroes.com. We're taking your calls right now. We're going over everything from political harassment, creating boogeymen, and blaming you for it, by the way, ordering you to go get guns. And then when you actually use them, it's a problem. Think about what goes on at schools. And before we go to Elaine, and thank you for staying on hold at 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-5735. Let's take a look at schools. The government repeatedly for the last 15, 20 years has said, our children are our most important resource. That's the official thing you get. The children, the most important resource. The average guy who has lost his job has no 401k, no future. The one that Donald Trump is talking to about his eroded, destroyed America, being overrun by Mexicans, by immigrants, by all these people taking his jobs. That's why he's jobless, but he needs to go and get even. He cannot punch up to his government. Our legal system, our Constitution says you punch up to the government. You get redress upstairs from your Senate and your Congress, but you can no longer reach them, can you? You can't even get to a mayor. Have you ever tried to make a comment in West Hollywood City Hall? They got rid of that. Oh no, decorum rules. Really, we don't want you to talk at all. People cannot get to their government. So what do? They know one thing is true universally. The children are our most important resource. That's from the government. So the way they get to the government is they go to the schoolyards and they shoot up the only thing the government cares about, the children. It is not a normal condition for a father to go shoot children, not a normal condition. But that father, so frustrated, shoots the one thing the government says it cares about. There's a whole lot of unpacking to do here, and so much, and it's never what it looks like. It's always way deeper. Let's go to Elaine. You're on Rethinking Heroes. Hello, Elaine.
I'm just curious because you mentioned DeSantis. I'm wondering, why is it that he can ban people from saying things when actually the First Amendment to the Constitution is freedom of speech?
I'm coughing because it's hilarious. Well, of course, you're exactly right. It is freedom of speech to be gay, to be this, to be that. You have freedom of expression, and your Constitution absolutely, unequivocally, irreversibly, uncontroversially talks about you having your agency, whether it's habeas corpus, and you having the right key to self-determination. Self-determination. That means if you want to dress up as a clown and stand on your head, you get to do that in the United States. So banning gays, banning this, banning thinking, First Amendment, I mean, seriously, it's outrageous. But we don't have Walter Cronkite. We don't have any grown-ups, nobody giving accountability. I mean, I wish CNN did it. We have nobody. So the average person, unfortunately, is ignorant to it and is just looking at a parental person to interpret what's going on and fix the problem. But here you are, Elaine. Here you are pointing out the obvious. So if there's one of you, there are many of you, and that makes me feel better.
Well, how is he getting away with it, sending people to prison?
He's the governor, and the governor of Florida is very similar to the governor of Nassau, Bahamas. When the pirates were in the Bahamas, the governor has extraordinary powers. Extraordinary. He can declare and dictate, and the legislature just rubber stamps it, and boom, it's done. It's not like California, where it has to go through committees and processes, and it's very difficult. That creates stability, which is why European governments have stabilities. You might have 18 arms of the government, the Green Party, the Yellow Party, the this party, the that party. None of them gets too much control where they can tilt the scales and take over and change policy overnight. So it creates a slow, easy stability. This is what our Supreme Court was supposed to do, is create stability, until it got completely one-sided on purpose. So unfortunately, you get governors with these extraordinary powers given to them in the last 20 years. You've got Project 2025 that would give the president as a unique unitary executive. We would call it a king. Anyone would call it a king. We can't call it a king because our Constitution forbids a king. So they call it a unitary executive, but he would get to be the king, destroy all the government, all the different factions, the areas, the bureaus, the administrations, and he would decide yes or no. Guillotine goes on that corner. This goes on this corner. This is why it's so important right now, and why everyone is so frustrated. I appreciate your call very much. I think we can squeeze in Margot in Montebello. You're on Rethinking Heroes.
Hello. Yes, thank you very much. Great parody song. I wanted to tell you that the term you used for the capitalists, when you use the word vulture, that is inaccurate, because the vultures are not a bad thing. They're a good thing. It's the word vampire. I'd like to get that word put up towards those capitalists, because they're sucking the life's blood, our money for healthcare and education and food and all that away from us. And it's going to take more than garlic to get rid of them. But please use the proper term, vampire capitalists and capitalism. Okay? I wanted to share that.
I am happy to upgrade.
Yeah, good. It's ornithologically correct. And I appreciate your program. It's so fascinating. And I thought you were recording because it sounded like some of the similar topics that are still so pertinent. But just remember, vampire capitalists, we must get rid of them somehow and work together to do that. Okay? And
all right.
I saw your picture on your site. You're really cute.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. I hope we meet in person someday. That would be great. Have a great day.
Well, thank you so much for the vampire capitalism. I will remember, and I will use it, and I will give you attribution, Margot. Thank you so much. Cary Harrison with you. This is Rethinking Heroes. Always love hanging with you. And I love this like sword play that we do together, where we really get in there and we cut the fat off the meat and get down to the bottom line. And your insights, your eyeballs, your ears, your sniffer, all of this stuff helps so much for us to have clarity. And then our job is to go out and help others have the clarity that we've been able to enjoy together. I will look forward to seeing you next week. Don't forget, you can get our free newsletter at rethinkingheroes.com. We're going to get a copy of this show, every show, plus transcripts. You can also catch us on Instagram every single week, YouTube every single week at Cary Harrison, CaryHarrison. And I look forward, by the way, to seeing you next week.
Rethinking Heroes with Cary Harrison. RethinkingHeroes.com.